Ultimately, time is an illusion, but here on planet Earth, we're gonna need to know how long this takes. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the specific time frames on exactly how long it took me to manifest some of my biggest desires. As I've been preparing to make this video for you guys, I have been looking back at some of my old manifestation journals, and let me tell you, I actually was a little bit creeped out on how well these manifestation practices worked and how there were so many times when I would do a cycle of manifestation, which I'll explain that to you in a little bit more detail here in this video. But I would do this cycle of manifestation in my journal. I would think that nothing happens, but now looking back, all of these cycles manifested something into my life. So it's crazy how well this worked. For each desire that I have manifested in my life, the timing has been slightly different, but there is an overall pattern that I typically see whenever I set the intention to level up or manifest myself into a more desirable reality. When it comes to understanding time in general, we are conditioned as 3D humans in this time-space reality to view time in a certain way. We are conditioned to view time as very linear. We have grown up with this linear perception of time that allows us to view time as having a past, a present, and a future. We have been conditioned to break up time into hours, weeks, months, and years, and we typically even set schedules for each day of our life based on time. But ultimately, this perception of time is a complete illusion, and only the present moment exists. So outside of our perception of linear time, there is no such thing as past and future. So there is no one set life path that you are destined to follow. We are so ingrained to see things through this lens of past, present, and future. But what is really going on here is that we are moving in and out of different realities or different states of consciousness. Our future has an infinite amount of possibilities in front of us. So there is no one static future or no one static life path. There is an infinite amount of potentials that are already available to you and that are already created. According to Neville Goddard, all creation is already finished, and this means that all outcomes, circumstances, and scenarios, all versions of you that could possibly exist, already exist within this present moment. And we are able to move through these different states of consciousness or these different parallel realities in a way that makes it appear to us as one linear timeline. But this is not the truth. The truth is that all of these realities and possibilities are existing simultaneously right now in the present moment, and through our focus, through our 3D human mind, we are only able to tap into and experience any one of these given states at any one particular time. So it's like browsing the internet, right? All of the wealth of knowledge and information that exists on the internet is always available to you at any given time, but you are only able to perceive of one piece of this information or one website at a time, even though all the websites, all the pages, all the information is existing out there right now. You are not able to view all of the information or all the knowledge that's on the internet at once. It would be too much. It would be overwhelming. And so essentially, when we perceive ourselves as moving through these different states of consciousness, it is registering in our 3D minds as moving through a linear timeline with a past, present, and future. But in reality, the time is an illusion, and we are just experiencing different states of consciousness that are all existing in the present moment. So all that background on time being said, when you are manifesting something, the amount of time that it's going to take you to manifest that specific desire is going to correlate to how long it takes you to match up with that particular state of consciousness, to embody and become that state of consciousness, to experience that state of consciousness. So when I set out to manifest a desire, or I want to move into a new reality or a new state of consciousness, I typically manifest in cycles. And within each of these manifestation cycles, there are a few stages that I typically see as my manifestation comes to pass. The first stage is the initial desire stage, which is where I set the intention for what I want to manifest. And that's typically when I start out on a new manifestation cycle, which if I'm recording this manifestation cycle, that would be day one of a new cycle, when I set the intention on what I want to manifest within this manifestation cycle. And the next stage would be the manifestation process. So that is when I start doing the manifestation practices. And this usually lasts about a week to 2 weeks. And around this time, I'm actually feeling very motivated and very positive. I'll typically start to see a little bit of positive movement in my 3D reality. I'll notice my mindset being more more aligned with the version of me that I'm becoming, with the version of me that has my manifestation, and I'll start to feel like everything is going my way. And then after a couple of weeks of this, I will typically move into the ego backlash stage, which, least favorite stage, am I right? It's when suddenly it seems like I'm backtracking. I'm back to square one. I'm even lower than when I started. I'm having a bunch of negative thoughts coming up. I'm having a bunch of negative limiting beliefs coming up to the surface. A lot of negative things are starting to manifest in my 3D reality. This is because my ego, the set point of my ego has been triggered because I set out to make this change. And so it is now reverting me back to the old state, the original state, so that it can feel safe. Because any manifestation or change in consciousness, change in self-concept is a death to the ego, to that old self-concept, right? And so as Neville Goddard says, you must die to the old man to become the new man. This is the stage where you are dying to the old man and you are becoming the new man. But the old man, or this old self-concept, is resisting this, right? It is holding on for dear life, trying to pull you back into that old state. But eventually, if you persist in these manifestation processes, and if you persist in this manifestation and you don't give up, you will eventually die to the old man, and you will shift your self-concept, or you will shift your ego into a new self-concept or identity that your ego now sees as the status quo. And this is you becoming the new man. And after this is complete, when you persist through this phase of manifestation, you will start to see the bridge of events. You will start to see things moving in your reality a little bit more. I will typically notice some big changes to my reality at this point. You may not understand why these big changes are happening, but just know that ultimately, even if you don't understand why it's happening, it is happening to lead you to your manifestation. And so while you're moving through this bridge of incidents, it is possible that you may again go back, revert back to the ego backlash, and then again have to persist through that to continue to align with that new self-concept. And after this bridge of events is completed, that is when I will see my manifestation come to fruition in my 3D reality. So looking back at my manifestation journals here, the first huge round of intentional manifestations that I set into motion, that I have documented in these journals, started in January of 2020. This is when I got really serious about manifesting. And I had a lot of big desires at this time. Like every aspect of my life was an aspect that I wanted to shift. So I was trying to manifest all these huge desires at one time. I wanted to find my soulmate. I wanted to get married. I wanted to buy a house. I wanted to be able to work on my YouTube videos full time. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom who ran her own business and didn't have to work at a 9-to-5 job. But when I started this, I was basically the opposite of all of these desires. I was single. I had just recently gone through a breakup. I was working a 9-to-5 job that I didn't like, that barely paid the bills, where I was barely making ends meet. I was living in this small apartment that I honestly didn't like at all. So when I was setting this intention and setting this manifestation cycle into motion, I put myself in the end state. I was living in the end as already being this version of me that had all of these things that I wanted. That was honestly almost a complete opposite of the version of me that I was starting out with. But I wanted to step into this parallel reality where I was this other version of myself, even if it seemed so much different from the version that I was. And so I placed myself in imagination in that end state of being that person, being that version of me that had all of those things, that had the marriage, that had the business, that had the house, that had the freedom, that had all of those things that I desired. And that is what I used as a basis, a starting point for this manifestation cycle. So as I mentioned, I started doing my manifestation practices, journaling, visualization, all of that back in January of 2020. And I actually did make a video where I talk a little bit more about what exactly techniques I was using during this time. So I'll link that video in the description box below if you want to check that one out. This started in January of 2020, and I saw the first major manifestation come to pass in August of 2020, so about 7 months later. And this is where I manifested my dream apartment. And this dream apartment was actually across the country. And so after I had moved across the country into this new apartment, I had my next major manifestation come to pass in January of 2021. And this is when I met my soulmate, or my now husband. And so this was about a year later after I started intentionally manifesting these desires, and about again 6 months later from the last major manifestation that I saw come to pass. And then the next major thing that happened was that I manifested my dream job, still a 9-to-5 job, but it was my dream 9-to-5 job, working from home, making a lot more money. And that came in August of 2022. So there was a pretty large time period between these two manifestations. And then the next desire that came into my life was manifesting getting engaged, and this happened in April of 2023. So this is about 3 years later after I originally started this manifestation process. And then I manifested finally being able to quit my full-time job and go full-time on YouTube. And this happened in April of 2024. And so again, this was about a year later from the last major manifestation that dropped into my life. But during that past year, I was very focused on planning the wedding, getting married, all of that stuff. And then lastly, finally, to wrap up this manifestation cycle, I was able to manifest getting pregnant in August of 2024. And so now that baby is due in May of 2025. And so now you can see all of these things that I was originally wanting when I started my manifestation cycle in January 2020 have now come to pass 5 years later. And even though it does seem like that is a large time frame, I want you to be totally aware that I was in a completely different state of consciousness when I started setting all these intentions. And as they did drop into my life, as the time passed, my life just kept getting better and better and better. It was on an upward trajectory. So even though it took a while for me to fully complete this cycle, my life had been getting better since I started the intention, since I set the intention. So as you can see, this one took a bit of time. It was a 5-year-long bridge of events where each manifestation that was dropping in was getting me closer to my ultimate end goal. So now let's move on to another shorter round of intentional manifestation here. So this one started back on November 14th, 2023. And when I set out to start this manifestation cycle, I didn't have a specific intention at this time. I had just felt like I had gotten out of alignment. I had stopped doing my manifestation practices. And basically, I just wanted to get back on track and I wanted to get back into alignment with my higher self and start improving my life. At this point, I felt like I was just getting out of alignment and I was manifesting a lot of negative scenarios into my life, a lot of difficulties, and I wanted to just get back on track and manifest myself into a higher timeline or a more comfortable, a more blissful state of consciousness. So when I was looking back at my manifestation journals, this was the manifestation cycle that actually creeped me out quite a bit because I did this cycle for 53 days. I stopped doing it on January 27th. And I documented all of those days. So you can see right here, I have day 53. So I did this for exactly 53 days. But at the time when I stopped doing this manifestation cycle, I didn't think anything had happened. I was like, well, I guess I just didn't manifest anything because for these 53 days, I didn't see any significant changes in my 3D reality. But how creepy is this? When you read my entry on day 53 when I stopped doing this, I write, I feel so amazing and high vibe today. Something has definitely shifted in my life. I really am confident that my plan to shift timelines into a higher vibe version of me has worked officially. So I wrote that on day 53 and then I just stopped doing the manifestation practices. I stopped doing the cycle and I didn't think anything happened. But when I look back at this time in my life, I realized that I posted my first successful YouTube video, which successful for me because before I posted this video, my videos were getting like 30 views, maybe 50 views at most. But I posted this video about robotic affirmations on January 20th. And that was the first video I ever posted that really took off. And it really set the stage for my YouTube channel to actually start growing. And then I posted another video on February 27th about my Neville Goddard revision success story, and that video took off as well. And so those videos got my channel finally growing, finally taking off. It finally got the algorithm to align them with the right group of people, with people that were interested in this manifestation content. And so when I look back at the time frames and the dates, this manifestation cycle actually manifested the first initial growth of my YouTube channel. And so that was crazy because I didn't realize that these two things were correlated until I went back to look at my manifestation journals. So that was a pretty cool manifestation cycle. And that one was a lot shorter too. It was a lot quicker. It only took me 53 days to complete this cycle. So not even 2 months. So when I look back at this now, I can see that I intuitively understood that it was done. And I intuitively stepped into that Sabbath state where I didn't feel like I needed to manifest anymore. I felt like I had shifted timelines. And even though I didn't think I was seeing any movement in my 3D reality, I was seeing movement in my 3D reality. And so I was able to step into that Sabbath of knowing that it was done, embodying the new state of consciousness. And I stopped doing the manifestation practices. And as you can see, my 3D reality shifted. And this is what triggered my YouTube channel to start taking off. So now you've gotten a feel for the different lengths of these cycles. I have a very long 5-year manifestation cycle, and then I have a shorter 2-month manifestation cycle. My most recent manifestation cycle started back on October 10th of 2024 and wrapped up on November 29th of 2024. So this was a 43-day long cycle. And again, this cycle started without any specific intention. I just felt like I had fallen off track. I wasn't keeping up with my manifestation practices. My mindset was reverting back to these old states. And I was again starting to manifest a lot of difficulties and challenges into my life that I just didn't want to deal with. And so I wanted to get back on track. I wanted to get back into alignment, and I wanted to shift into a higher timeline. So again, very general intention, shifting into the highest possible timeline for me. So this one ended on November 29th, and I actually ended this one, I would say, in a more of an ego backlash state. I was really down on myself. I wasn't sleeping very good. I was very crabby. I was very miserable. I felt like this wasn't working, and I just kind of gave up, honestly. But the weird thing that happened with this manifestation cycle was that I had this crazy spiritual awakening experience that happened on December 3rd through December 6th. And during this time period, I was actually taking a solo vacation. During this solo trip, I had this intense calling, this intense urge to go into a deep meditation. And so for those couple of days, I was really meditating a lot, and I was in this deep meditative state where I had this next level of spiritual awakening. This wasn't a major spiritual awakening like I have had in the past, but it shifted my mindset to a whole new level of awareness, a whole new level of perception, a whole new way of being, and a whole new way of understanding manifestation. And then after I had this spiritual awakening experience, I suddenly was a match to all of this new manifestation information, all of these new insights dropped into my life, all of these new manifestation techniques and tools. I now understood them so clearly, and I was able to utilize them in new ways. So my perception on manifestation in general changed during this time. And then since then, things have been improving, and I'm able to manifest my desires a lot more effortlessly. To kind of put my new manifestation insights into practice, I decided to try to manifest a vacation. And I actually manifested that vacation in January of 2025. And I started doing these new manifestation practices in early December after I had this spiritual awakening. So for this cycle, it took me about 3 months total from when I originally started it in October to when I had that vacation manifestation drop in at the end of January. But I would say that one of the major manifestations that happened to me during this cycle was this awakening to a new level of awareness or a new level of consciousness that allowed me to understand manifestation in a different way and allowed me to manifest my desires more effortlessly and honestly a lot more quicker into my life. So this is an interesting manifestation cycle because it's kind of building off of itself. It took me about 2 months to align with that spiritual awakening experience, and then about another 2 months to manifest that actual physical desire of the vacation that was born out of that spiritual awakening experience. Since I have had this shift in consciousness or this shift of understanding around manifestation, I have now set the intention to manifest some new larger desires into my life. So I would say actually that I am now in a current cycle of manifestation that started after I had this spiritual awakening experience in December of 2024 and started to implement these new manifestation tools, techniques, and understandings into my life. And this manifestation cycle is continuing now into my present day. So you can see here through my experiences with manifestation that we are always shifting through these different states of consciousness. Our lives are always shifting and changing, and though it appears to be a linear time frame with a past, present, and future, we are just shifting into different states of consciousness. And through conscious manifestation, through consciously creating our desires, we can intentionally shift into the state of consciousness that we prefer, or the reality that we want to experience. And if you like this video and you want to learn more about how I manifest, I definitely recommend that you check out these videos, how I manifested my dream life in 30 days and how I manifested my dream job. Both of these manifestations are the ones that I mentioned earlier that were born out of that original 2020 cycle. And in these videos, I go into a lot more detail on how each of these manifestations came to fruition, the exact bridge of events, and also the exact techniques that I used to make them happen.